I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose. Glorious purpose.
My own glorious purpose.
The mission? What, your glorious purpose? Give me a break, you can't beat them.
You leave your glorious purpose there.
Power. Glorious power. Glorious purpose.
Being the God of Mischief, Loki is a hard character to understand, as you can never be sure where he's lying and planning to betray you, or being truthful in what he's saying. So, just who is Loki?
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
Loki is the malevolent God of Mischief who schemes and manipulates his way towards his glorious purpose. But after accidentally causing the death of his mother and reconciling with his brother, Loki turns towards the side of good, redeeming himself in the process. However, that Loki did his best impression of a Kit Kat bar. Instead, we are left with a new Loki that hasn't undergone character angst. Sorry, I meant character growth, due to the actions of the Avengers in Endgame. The new Loki that we are left with is a freshly defeated Loki who still firmly believes in his own superiority, even though he really shouldn't after the beatdown that he had at the hands of the Hulk. And this belief stays with him as he is captured and processed by the TVA. Loki immediately shows that his defeat at the Avengers' hands meant nothing to him, as he still believes that he is greater than any other being. As after he manages to escape with the Tesseract, he doesn't take a moment of self-reflection. No, instead, he immediately begins to postulate and grandstand about his own purpose. Loki stubbornly clings to this superiority as he is captured and processed by a TVA. Even when given evidence that the TVA are not people to mess around with, Loki is still condescending to them. For example, he says,
Madam, a god doesn't plead.
and,
To stave off my ascent to God King.
which goes to show that Loki believes himself to be above others, and Loki fully believes that he is destined for greatness. In essence, this is a Loki without the character building moments. This superiority complex doesn't last for long, as the TVA breaks this attitude that Loki has.
You have no idea what I'm capable of!
I think I might have an idea of what he's capable of.
Approach the bench.
Hi.
If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, it's a bad idea.
Okay, I'm just chasing a hunch.
Anything goes sideways, it's on you.
Okay. I feel like I'm always looking up to you. I like it. It's appropriate.
At a first glance, Loki is the unflappable, arrogant God of Mischief who is always 10 steps ahead of everyone. But this turns out to be a facade that he has built around himself. After saving Loki from being pruned, Mobius begins to break Loki's facade as he questions him about moments from his past. Throughout this questioning, Loki's unflappable exterior begins to show some cracks as the questioning begins to anger him. Loki's anger comes from the fact that the TVA believes that they control what he does, and that infuriates Loki, who believes that his choices are his own. But Loki's facade truly breaks after seeing his mother die, which causes him to fly off the handle, losing the unflappable veneer that he has crafted for himself. And from this point onward, we now see who Loki truly is as a person. We begin to see who Loki is underneath his facade as he shows more of his emotions. especially when he sees what his future will lead up to, as we see Loki go through a hurricane of emotions. We see him become genuinely happy when he sees Odin and Thor recognizing him as family. This immediately shifts into gut-wrenching despair when he sees that his glorious purpose only leads to his death at Thanos' hands. This shows us a lot about who Loki is as a person, as we see that he deeply cares about his family, as a lot of his actions were based around finally being recognized by them, and that he thought that he had a glorious purpose, and being shown that his only purpose was to die causes Loki to laugh out in disbelief that his ambitions go nowhere. Loki's emotions help tell us a lot about who Loki is. While we get an idea of who Loki really is, we don't know why he lives under a facade. But a couple of scenes later, we learn the reason why Loki lives under a mask, and what he really thinks about himself. Loki crafted his facade to appear powerful, to hide away his own weakness, and that he sees himself as a villain. The first thing that we learn from Loki is that he doesn't enjoy betraying and murdering people, but he's had to do this to keep up the front that he is powerful. This exchange tells us that Loki thinks that he is weak, which probably stems from the fact that he wasn't as strong as his brother, and that he was alienated because of this, which could have been solved if Odin was halfway a competent father. So, he hid away everything that he thought made him weak, such as his emotions to better fit in with Asgard. Due to the actions that Loki has had to take to maintain his front, Loki sees himself as a villain. Because would a good or normal person do what he has done? Loki sees himself as a weak and morally bankrupt person. But that doesn't mean that Loki stays this way throughout the show, as he begins to change as a person.
Okay, Louis was only sold regionally on Earth from 2047 to 2051. All you gotta do is cross-reference that with every apocalyptic event. I'm gonna give you half, and let's make it a competition. See who finds it,
Sure.
Okay? What, you wanna bet something?
Yeah.
Gentleman's bet? Yeah, let's play for pride. Okay, may the best man win. Go. Anything?
It's not the climate disaster of 2048 or the tsunami of 2051.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
While Loki is still the sarcastic god that we all know and love, Loki begins to change as a person as he begins to trust people other than himself, and begins to allow himself to show the weakness that he once hid away. Loki's change can be easily seen in his relationship with Mobius as they track down his variant. For example, when Loki figures out that his variant is using apocalyptic events to hide away from the TVA, he decides to tell Mobius about this and doesn't decide to hide it away, as the Loki from before would rather chew off his own leg than trust another being. Which goes to show that Loki has undergone some character change. He even begins to show his weakness in the form of his emotions. When Loki inadvertently betrays Mobius to chase down Sylvie, Loki shows remorse in having to go back on his deal with Mobius. If Loki didn't change, Loki wouldn't have shown any emotion in betraying Mobius, as that would have shown weakness on his part. We can clearly see that Loki's interaction with Mobius has begun to change him. However, I think Loki changes the most from his interactions with Sylvie. If Loki's interaction with Mobius begins to change Loki, then Loki's interaction with Sylvie speeds up that change. Despite attempting to kill each other in the world's most complicated example of self-harm, Sylvie and Loki form a connection when they share their respective crappy childhoods. And this causes Loki to care about her because she shares a lot in common with him. He even trusts her when she exposes the lies behind the TVA, showing that Loki has become a more trusting individual, at least when it comes to Sylvie. When it comes to her, Loki lets his emotions run freely, such as the case when they are captured by the TVA again. Loki doesn't ask about what Mobius is going to do to him, but instead asks about what they have done to Sylvie first. This goes to show that Loki has changed, as the Loki from before wouldn't have asked about her, because that would have made him show weakness. So, due to his interactions with Sylvie and Mobius, Loki has become a more trusting individual who no longer believes his emotions to be a weakness of himself, and no longer wants to cause unnecessary pain and destruction. I believe a scene from episode 5 best shows how Loki has changed, as well as providing an in-depth show into what Loki really wants.
monsters. Ah. Hello. Which one of us are you? This is a nightmare.
And that is the scene I lovingly refer to as the room filled with Lokis, which provides us an in-depth view into how Loki has changed as well as what he really wants. When all the Lokis meet, it is a series of betrayals that lead up into a brawl, all because of their supposed glorious purpose, which is practically meaningless as there is nothing to rule over. However, that isn't who our Loki is anymore, as he looks frankly embarrassed and is cringing due to his various actions. In the same manner one would cringe about something embarrassing they did when they were younger, showing that Loki has changed as he knows that he can trust others now, and betraying others is just hurting himself. The variants other than Kid and Classic Loki show who Loki was in the past, as they only trust themselves and would gladly betray someone for their glorious purpose. But he has changed, as even Kid Loki notices that our Loki is different from the other variants. While the other variants show who Loki used to be, Kid, Classic, and Alligator Loki show what Loki really wants. Classic and Kid Loki have a lot to say about who Loki is as a person, and as much as I hate to admit it, I don't think Alligator Loki has much to say about Loki's character. Kid Loki represents a Loki who was successful in achieving their glorious purpose, as he became the sole heir to Asgard by killing Thor. This is shown to not turn out well for him as he is deleted by the TVA. Despite managing to fulfill his glorious purpose, Kid Loki gives off a melancholic vibe when he should be the happiest out of all the Lokis. This says that while Loki has always thought that he wanted to be a ruler, it isn't actually what he wanted or actually needed. Classic Loki represents what Loki actually needs as a character. Classic Loki provides a lot of context to what Loki truly wants as a character. Classic Loki is a Loki who manages to trick Thanos and manages to survive, but isolates himself for a long time due to thinking that his existence only brings pain. This Loki is shown to be disgusted at the idea of a glorious purpose due to the constant betraying and backstabbing others for more power. Classic Loki is used to show what Loki really needs is not glorious purpose, because this Loki represents a Loki at the end of his journey. And it isn't power that he wants anymore, because what this Loki really wants is to see his brother again. This can be extrapolated to show what Loki really wants is to be beside the people that he cares about. However, Classic Loki comes back around to the idea of glorious purpose when he sacrifices himself to protect Sylvie and our Loki. But it changes the idea of Loki's glorious purpose being that of ruling to that of protecting others. Kid and Classic Loki show that Loki's want to become a ruler isn't what actually Loki really wants, and that what he really wants is to be beside the people that he cares about. At this point, we have a pretty good idea of who Loki is, but it becomes clearer who Loki really is as a person when he and Sylvie confront He Who Remains.
This is wild.
Who Loki is at the end of this show is best shown through his and Sylvie's confrontation with He Who Remains. In this confrontation with the Jerk, the two Lokis find out that Kang created a sacred timeline and the TVA to stop his evil variants and prevent multiversal war. And he gives the Loki two options. The first is to take over the TVA for him, or kill him and possibly allow untold death and destruction. Well, Sylvie wants to kill him because she is fundamentally unable to trust anyone else, and thinks Kang is lying. Whereas our Loki wants to take control of the TVA, but not for the reasons that you may suspect. After all, Loki is being offered everything that he has ever wanted. Why wouldn't he take the deal? But instead of wanting to rule, Loki's reason for accepting Kang's offer is because that he is worried killing Kang will cause something worse to come along. This character moment shows that Loki doesn't care about his glorious purpose anymore, and that he has come to care more about people that he once thought below him. Loki once thought that he was a villain, but his actions during this confrontation show that Loki is a hero, as that reaction is something that I would think goody two-shoes Captain America to make. He even tries to stop the woman that he has came to love from making a mistake, but unfortunately, while our Loki has become more trusting, Sylvie hasn't, and due to that she betrays Loki by flinging him back to the TVA, where what Loki feared has become a reality. Loki is the God of Mischief, who once hid his weakness behind a facade, has now embraced his emotions, no longer seeking a glorious purpose, as now he only seeks to protect his family and friends. Once the villain of his own story, he has become a hero, redeeming his past actions. That is who Loki is. The ending of Loki has made me excited for what role he will play in the multiverse. Will he go back to being a villain? Will he become a superhero? Or will he become something in between? Thank you for listening to my ramblings on the character of Loki. As this is my first video, I would like to hear more about your thoughts and criticisms on the video, and hopefully I'll have another video out soon.